Ladies and gentlemen, the Kids in the Room podcast. Kids in the Room podcast.
That's right. That's right.
Brought to you by Move Faces TV.
Woo! All right. Hey guys, welcome to the Kids in the Room podcast. Today we've got Dan Bennett on the actual show. Dan, what's going on?
Hey man, I like your energy.
All right.
Not too much.
Yeah. So today, what have you been up to? What are you doing? What is your thing? Or what are your things, right? Because I'm pretty sure you can do a lot of stuff. You look like a man of many talents.
Yeah, Renaissance man, if you will, I guess. On paper, there are a lot of different things, but everything boils down to story development and a lot of times video being the vehicle that's taking that story where it's going. So I help a lot of clients in the business world either get on camera for the first time or create content around the story that they're trying to tell their audience. Today was actually kind of all over the board. I got to catch up with an old friend. I was on a podcast earlier that was really fun. Just kind of sharing similar things, what I'm up to, what I'm doing. Had a couple sales calls that went really well, and one of them was onboarding a brand new client. So mixed bag today. Good day.
Sweet. Today was a good day. Awesome. Remix. Ice Cube. Bringing it back. I hear you. Yeah, man. I hear it.
Love it.
Yeah. So you said you do sales calls. You know, what are we talking about here? What are we selling?
A
we
lot
creating,
of times,
right? Okay.
yeah. A lot of times it's through word of mouth and referrals, and it's kind of all over the board. But entrepreneurs, small business owners, solopreneurs who have something really amazing to offer the world and are looking to either get into video for the first time, so start telling their story via video content, or they've tried video but they realize they need a little bit of help from a professional. Today's sales call was actual physical production, so we're doing some filming in their location and then putting together their basically their about us video, which is actually something I think a lot of companies are kind of missing. It's just a nice video welcoming you to what it is that people do and why they care so much about what they do, as opposed to just stagnant web pages that say, hi, this is what we do in text format. So it's usually, someone who cares about story, and then me ushering them into developing that story and figuring out which digital medium needs to take that story where it's going.
All right. Makes sense. So you basically, you have these clients, they contact you, and you kind of help them tell their story and basically kind of make them look better. You make people look better when it comes to their visuals, right?
Yeah, I like that. I like it. Sometimes as people too, which is super fun. I actually had someone kind of pick up on something not too long ago on a call with me, and they're like, what you do is you make the invisible visible. And that really hit hard for me. I was like, wow, I do kind of take what's inside someone and bring it out, because a lot of times businesses are focused on features and benefits and value and cost, and all those things are important, but a lot of time what gets lost in that is why they do what they do and who they are and why someone should care when they're watching on the other end.
Yeah, I think that matters. I think sometimes as creatives, right? And I figure everyone is creative, just some of us a little bit more tuned in a little bit more than others and have a special more talent in certain type of sector or skill set within that branch. But I feel like, as creators, you can kind of, you have this energy where you can kind of make these things extremely better. But I think at core, we're basically problem solvers, right?
Yeah. I like that a lot. I run across a lot of people who don't think they're creative. They either say, my brother-in-law at picnics, he's a great storyteller, but I'm not. Or the CEO of a company might say that, they're not creative at all. And then after spending some time with them, I find out that they're one of the most creative problem solvers I've ever seen in business. And I like to remind them, just because you don't paint or sculpt doesn't mean you're not creative. So I definitely agree with your sentiment. We're all creative in some way, and capturing that is half the fun.
Yeah, I think was it Pablo Picasso who said something like that? All people are created all people are creative or born creative or something like that, but I guess they're told not to. I forgot the actual saying, but
yeah, I don't know, but I'm gonna look it up later.
Yeah, we gotta look that shit up later. But basically, I mean, it kind of touches on that everybody's born creative, and it's just like we need to tune into what that creativity is. And I think you're right. A lot of people will they'll tag creativity to some visual artistic thing like painting or drawing or sculptures or something else of that sense. But then there's like creativity as a an engineer, as a computer designer, as an architect. These are all creative branches. There's creativity in your mind. Creativity, create. You got to get that word, which is create, right? And we're all made to create things, and what that is making something that we don't visually see and manifest that into reality. And so that is what we're essentially doing when we're creating or being creative, which is more the action of it.
Yeah, and that's huge to remember. Oftentimes, I think that on the business side of things, it gets a little detached from just the human condition, and I like to treat business as just an extension of life. We still have relationships, we still have expectations, we still have creativity and problem solving to do, whether it's with a significant other in your home or whether it's with a client, and I think we lose focus a little bit here and there on that. So it's great to bring it back to we are all creative. I talk often about story and the fact that it's built into all of us, and sometimes I have to remind people, that I'm working with, that we're all great storytellers, and we're born. The first thing that we're given is food because we're usually crying and we want to be fed, and the next thing that happens is people start telling a story. They coo at us and they rock us and they tell us stories and sing to us, and from the time we're born, we're becoming great storytellers. So yeah, it's in there. We just got to remind people to check on the inside and bring it out a little bit.
I mean, so you basically help people, tell a story, and do you have a background in video or production? Like, how did you get into this? What are we doing?
Yeah, my background's in engineering. The remnants of that are that I'm very, very much 50-50 left right brain. But what I liked about drafting and design and stuff in high school was the creative part of it. I left that career very unhappy and trying to figure out what I wanted in my early 20s. I was in a band that toured, and I did all of our merch and design and web and all that kind of stuff. And I was always ordering t-shirts from a local printer. And one day, the guy that owned the company was like, "Hey, you order a lot of shirts." I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of how we stay on the road. And he's like, "Well, if you play with other bands who also sell shirts, if you land any of those jobs, I'll give you 15%. I'm like, "All right, I can do that. So I started doing shirt orders for other bands. And then he started noticing my artwork was better than his lead artist's work. So I started doing the artwork for other people. And then one day after, I don't know, it was about 8 or 10 months, I walked in, and John is his name. He's like, "Hey, you want a job?" And I'm like, "Actually, I left the engineering field and I've been looking for my next thing. So yeah." And I took over the lead spot in the art department for that apparel printing company. And that's when I started to kind of figure out that I could be creative and help tell someone else's story and actually make a living at it. So it's where it kind of comes from. It was a very, hate to use a buzzword, but it was a very organic process. I just kind of stumbled to the next thing, to the next thing. And that really led me to a point of just visually telling story in one form or another for other people.
Wow. I mean, it's almost like some type of like journey of destiny, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
feels that way. Yeah.
So you also mentioned that you were in a band earlier. Like, what were you? What were you? Guitar player, drummer? What was your specialty? What was your thing?
Yeah, I play guitar and sang. We were a three-piece, just modern rock, nice and simple and chunky. And somewhere, if someone searches hard enough, and there's still a music video floating around out there somewhere. Maybe you could throw it in the show notes as an Easter egg or something.
There we go.
Um, but yeah, it was a ton of fun, and I always treated it kind of like a business. It was really my first kind of venture into entrepreneurship because I had to do so much more than just the shows to make money so we could keep going. And building websites and designing and creating merch and t-shirts and posters and stuff like that was the beginning. But yeah, guitar, drums, rocked out, traveled around a little bit. It was fun.
Sick, sweet. So let me ask you another question on top of that. You said you were an engineer. What type of engineer?
Low level mechanical. And what's interesting about it is I'm from Flint, Michigan, but I was never in the auto industry. I was in pneumatics and steel, glass and concrete, but never auto. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, just very simplistic, junior engineer, mechanical drafting, stuff like that.
Okay, wow. Yeah, sweet. Yeah, gotta love that. So that's where you pretty much were, always creating, and you had this like, these moments in your career where you actually just started tampering with it, then it somehow led to shirts, but you were consistently creating, and then even when because you said you're a lead guitarist, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What kind of guitar do you play?
Oh, I always favored Schecters. I always owned Schecters.
Ah, you look like a Schecter. God.
Yeah, right. Right.
With the
Yeah, it
beard.
was that nice. Oh, it's like that. It's the Jack Daniel of guitars, right? Jack Daniels of guitars. It's just kind of that mid-level, works well, but not too expensive to break the bank. So like those, I had a higher end Washburn that I'd bring out for special occasions every once in a while. But yeah, usually just a Schecter C1.
Wow. I actually have this Schecter that's actually green, hollow body. It's really
Oh, nice.
beautiful. Got to show it to you one time. But
Yeah, they do manufacture their stuff well, even though it's affordable. So yeah, it's a good guitar to have.
yeah. I actually just liked it to feel because it was light and things like that. It didn't feel as heavy as like a Gibson or something like that.
Hmm.
And I really don't like the body of a Gibson as far as when it comes to its weight, right?
Yeah.
You know, don't
Yeah,
want
they're super heavy. It's one of those things if someone doesn't play and they put one on, sometimes, you'll get that like, whoa, I didn't expect that because
to.
it's like wearing a tree trunk.
It's a freaking scoliosis.
Yeah, right.
It's a scoliosis arch. I don't know. It's crazy. Yeah, bass too. I do bass too as well. So
Nice.
acoustic, got Fenders, got Taylors, got them all over here. So I
Nice.
kind of get the vibe. I get it, man. Definitely did some touring, did some great little high school bands too as well. Some little punk shows and things like that. But
Yeah.
I particularly like all type of music in general. But mostly when I was playing guitar all the time for bands, it was mostly like alty stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's cool when someone's got music in their background, whether it was, playing in band at school or in bands, just in any genre, like you mentioned, just makes life a little richer. And those are some really like incredible times as well as a human. So lots of great memories and stuff too.
Yeah, but do you find yourself when you're actually just like, I don't know, because I always do this. It's like when I'm actually in a car, somebody's playing music, I can hear, you find yourself listening to every freaking fracking element.
Yeah.
Where you're just like,
Yeah.
boom. And you feel like you want to, you play drums. I play drums too. So
Yeah.
I feel like I'm playing a set. I'm like, da, ba, ba.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If the guitar's coming on, your air guitarist, right? I mean,
Yeah,
do you
right.
find yourself doing
When
that?
it can be. I do. I definitely do it mentally, and it's a cool concept in general. Being involved in the film industry and now entrepreneurship, and just seeing the inner workings of different startups and stuff I've been involved in, you start to see behind the curtain or see the wizard in all the different things you do. Sometimes it ruins things because you are picking it apart instead of maybe just enjoying it. But I love it because I like being able to know how stuff works and what's in between the lines.
I mean, that's crazy because I think the thing that I mean, bringing it more to some type of like adolescence experience where, I remember, once I started learning how cartoons were actually created, where I just didn't want to watch them anymore after that. 'Cause I was
Yeah.
like, I can tell that this is a frame, and they just drew this. I don't like
Yeah.
cartoons anymore.
Yeah, last year I ruined Shark Week for my girlfriend.
What is Shark Week?
She's a huge Shark Week is Discovery Channel, I believe, where it's just a full week of shark
Get out of here.
episodes. It's just everything you could ever want to see about sharks. There's expeditions, there's reality shows, just everything jam packed into a week. And we were watching this episode where they were talking about how sharks breach, and a lot of people know about Seal Island, where the sharks go after the seals and come out of the water. And there's another location
Wow.
where they come out after salmon, and it's in shallower water, but it's still just as dynamic. And we were watching this, and I started kind of snickering, and she's like, "What?" I'm like, "It's funny that they're showing sharks super far away, but the splash sounds like it's right next to the boat." And then the splash right next to the boat is the same splash, and they were just using the same audio for different clips. And then 5 minutes later, she's like, "You ruined the whole thing. That's all I can hear now is the same 6 splashes being played over and over and over." I'm like, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Someone just didn't pay enough for the audio. That's all."
Dan, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? You ruined it for the ladies. Yeah,
know, right?
I do the same thing, bro. I do the same thing. I'll be in a situation where I'm just like, I start picking apart things, and it even start because even when I was in high school, I took this fashion merchandise class, right? As like a fucking joke with a couple of buddies. Literally, I was just like, hey, two other guys were like, hey, it'd be cool if we just joined this fashion merchandise class because there's gonna be a lot of hot ladies in there. Yeah. So we ended up joining it, thinking we were just gonna, hang out with the girls and it was gonna be awesome. And it turns out, we started learning stuff. Turns out we started
right.
learning. We started learning. God forbid that one. We learned.
Yeah.
Shit. Yeah. We started learning stuff. And what we learned was just, I don't know, it was amazing. After a while, there were some beautiful women, first of all, and started, helping out with work and stuff like that. And, sometimes you need that tutor. But other than that, you really start learning a lot of stuff. I started learning a lot of things. And I think even, me and my other two buddies, Chris and Justin, we actually just basically started looking at things differently through the class, and we started participating very well. And we just really, we enjoyed it. We started looking at patterns, colors, tones, undertones, bone structure, everything that you could pretty much think of. And then after that, you just started, you start looking at I feel like, I started looking at every person as like, okay, are they asymmetrical? Is the symmetry there in their bone structure? Is their eyebrows symmetry? Is there symmetry within the eyebrows or the eyes? Is one eye a little bit lower than the other? Is it shaped this way? You start noticing all the finer details. What color is the actual hair? Does it have contrast from the skin? And things like this crazy stuff that, a normal person wouldn't even actually pay attention to, or even like clothes and things like that. And I typically get in situations where, I'm with a lady and she's like, wearing, some extra high heels. And I'm like, hey, man, those heels are too high. you got to have them proportional or you're going to look like T-Rex after a second. Because it's like...
Yeah, there's a beauty to reverse engineering, and it was one of the few things that when I talk about left right brain, they don't meld together. I've just gotten really good at switching back and forth between them. But one of the things that did carry over from the engineering days to the creative days was reverse engineering a problem. I do it in business all the time, and I do it creatively all the time. So it's cool to have enough knowledge to look at something and then start dissecting it and reverse engineering it back to the beginning and realizing how stuff works, because it's not just mechanical things that work that way. It is fashion, it is branding, it's all those cool things that you can start to kind of see between the lines. And I think that's fun.
It is, but you got to find somebody else who finds that fun too.
Touche.
Because you could just sit there and be a freaking nomad or some type of like hermit and enjoy this stuff by yourself. But to find another person who actually enjoys these things or is able to compliment you on these things or is curious about what your knowledge is not as easy. Because like not everybody's like, they're like, Dan, what the fuck are you doing, bro? What do you? I don't care, Dan. I don't care. What are you talking about? Dan's always looking at Dan. Let's watch the show. Dan,
just enjoy it. Right.
But it's like, nah,
man,
I can't.
To bring it full circle, that's one of the most powerful elements of storytelling is relatability. I often use metaphor and analogy and anecdotes and stuff because that's how I learn. And to be honest, I'm lazy, so it's the only way I know how to teach. I've never explored other ways of teaching. And if you can make something that you care about or you understand make sense to someone else who's not in that world, you can find those connections sometimes. So yeah, story is a super flexible and powerful thing. And I think that's one of the ways that I use it is just trying to relate to people who are in other fields and doing different stuff.
Right. I think that's a basic structure of keeping a conversation going, because if you can't relate it to somebody, you're talking to yourself. It's like, it's your own vanity. It's your own ego. You're just like, I'm not involved in the fucking conversation. Who are you talking to?
Just nodding.
Who are you talking to? That guy's weird. What's going on? So the story, part of being a story, it has to relate, right? I think you don't have a story if it doesn't relate, because nobody's going to listen if it doesn't relate. I feel like personally, but I totally get it. I get it. You start creating these stories, you start dissecting things, and, I don't know. I think it's a beauty to it. I guess I was going to ask too as well. As a person who's actually a problem solver in itself, how do you go about like solving these types of problems? Like, where does this energy or this mindset come from? Because you also mentioned this thing, which I actually talk about too myself personally, which is ironic, which is the left and right brain balance. And I wonder if that can be even taught to everyone, or is this just something that certain people have? And is there any type of correlation to that being a person who plays instruments, right? Is there some type of correlation of being able to bounce or balance between 50-50 of that brain? Or are we training it to do so because we're turning on that creativity side and we're kind of like meditating through the music and things like that? And I don't know if you have like ADD or any ADHD or anything like that as well. Because there's things like that where they call like hyper focus, where certain people are really interested in certain things more than another, but they can focus, 10x times, for example, more than a normal human would who doesn't.
Yeah, man, those are some great questions. Really interesting ones too. I think I always like to start really high level and then get more detailed as I go.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll try that here. So super high level across those multiple questions is self-awareness. And it's one of those things that gets a little bit of like woo-woo backlash every once in a while. But to me, it's incredibly important. I don't think it's the only thing that matters, but knowing yourself as well as you can, I think is super important. And I got a couple different processes to answer those questions. So when it comes to the left and right brain kind of mix, I actually think of like cocktails. I think of different mixes, right? So there's a lot of questions that people have that have a duality to them. My clients hate when I do this to them. They'll say, "Hey, Dan, should I this or should I maybe do this?" And I'll say yes. And it drives them nuts. Like, how can it be both? Quick example, one of those is, should I just, better done than perfect, just get this out, put the content out, or should I really refine it and produce it and make it good? And I'll say yes. And really what I mean is, say like a screwdriver, you got orange juice and you got vodka. Some people like a splash of vodka, some people just like a splash of juice. You have to find something on your own kind of duality scale that works for you. So what I found out just in that like self-reflection and how do I transfer from being an employee in the corporate world to owning a business in that was exploring that self-awareness, and what I found for me was in that exploring, I was able to switch from left to right brain or back, but not make them play together. So then I really focused on switching as fast as possible. And I've got it down in my old age of 40. I've got it down to about 15 minutes. So I can go from like a sales call, it's very, very business driven. There's a board on the other end listening to everything I say. We're trying to figure out a project. And then I got to maybe edit some video. If I can get at least 15 or 20 minutes in between those things, I can literally shift from the analytical brain more over to the creative. And it's a process. I usually get a coffee, chill a little bit, maybe watch half of a sitcom or something. I do something to get more creative and start shifting that way. So I think a lot of it's, self-awareness and not just going to the internet and doing research and the first thing you find you try and it doesn't work and you give up, but maybe trying 6 or 7 versions of something. And I love that you brought up music because I've never thought of this before. And it's so cool that you brought it up. Music is very left right brain. There's the mechanics of what's happening, and if you don't do those mechanics appropriately, it's not going to sound the greatest. So you have, muscle memory and all those sorts of things. And then once you have enough of that put together where you can make a sound that doesn't make people want to run away, you can start to get creative and play within that structure, so it's very left right brain. And I never thought about the fact that playing guitar kind of set me up to be able to use left and right brain at the same time. So that's a cool insight that you had.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of noticed that from I've looked at a lot of great creators and people who are just really talented, and there's a typical pattern that I've located, and maybe it's because I have self awareness. I feel like where it's like, hey, look, well, how come I can do all these things? And I look back, I've been creating shit since I was a kid. I've been I've been hacking things since I was a kid. Typically I've loved computers. I love creating. I love solving problems. I love having conversations with people, getting to the root of it, seeing how I can help it and support it. And, music is another way of storytelling. It's another way to communicate. It's another way to meditate and vibrate and to create in general because you're having to think. I almost feel like you're almost, you're almost like almost using like some type of psychic ability because you're having to guess what you're going to play before you even play it, and you're manifesting things that aren't real, like, or in some way you just don't even know sometimes what you're playing. There's this like spiritual thing that takes over when you move to that next chord. Now you might say, okay, well, I know that chord, I know it's going to sound good, but subconsciously you start playing by itself. It starts going by itself, baby. It's like the universe starts taking over and you're just like boom, 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 boom. You just feel it. It's electrical.
That's super interesting, man. Wow. Man, you're bringing up all kinds of stuff I've never thought of before. You know, what's funny about that is I would always get picked on because I played guitar and sang because I wouldn't like play rock band or I wouldn't do karaoke. And they're like, you play guitar, you sing, why won't you do these things? And one of the reasons for rock band is because of that exact thing, but I never thought to articulate it the way you just did, that it's kind of out in front of you and it's manifesting as you go. Because the thing I didn't like about rock band, the game, was that it was all coming at you
Right.
and it was like reactive instead of proactive. And I never thought about it that way until you just said that you're like manifesting what's coming next because that's more outward instead of inward. And that's probably why I never liked that game.
No, because we got we have to create, you know, and
Yeah.
it's like, I think it's like, I was actually, you know, I was watching Michael Jackson clip one time, and you know, and I've had the, you know, also pleasure of, you know, hanging out with the family many times, which has been awesome as well. But
Yeah.
just to give a tip on it, is just like literally he said in a clip, you know, that, you know, music, you know, when they ask like, how are you creating these songs, and he says, you know, I'm not actually the author. They're coming to me from the heavens. I'm just a receiver. And I was like, holy
Yeah. The
shit.
vessel.
Holy shit. That is true. And that is like when you get in that spiritual state, right? It just starts playing. And then there's this creative space, the spiritual place, and then there's also the physical place. And they kind of just like mesh, flush together. And it's just like, you're just like, it's almost like one. And so I always, and what I'm saying basically is like, does this type of like practicing, you know, kind of open the door for you to be able to balance, you know, this 50-50, whereas most people are just like, or maybe they're taught this way or whatever, they're just like, they're one or the other, right? And it's really hard to
Yeah.
carry on a conversation with them because I'm pretty sure you felt it to where you can just go back and forth pretty easily with any type of person, but they
Yeah.
can't.
Totally. Yeah.
They can't. So it's
Yeah.
just like when you start going into the left brain area or you start going to the right brain area and you're dealing with another person who's the opposite, sometimes they can't, you know, if you're having that conversation with another person who's a left brain and their friend's a left brain, but then there's a right brain person in there, so you're like a group of four, can't pick up that conversation because
Yeah.
they're just not in the same wavelength. They can't pick it up and they're just like, I really don't get it and I don't understand what you're saying. So there's some type of confusion. And you maybe have to be sometimes the mediator.
Yeah. Man, that's a cool way of looking at it. I was just on a call a couple of days ago with a software engineer that works at Google, and he was very interested in story development and those sorts of things. And, you know, he was definitely saying, like, this is a very, you know, engineering minded job. It's not super creative. We're generally problem solving, we're not creating brand new things. And every, I don't know, third or fourth thing he would tell me about how they problem solve within a certain structure, I would say, oh, that's a lot like, and give him some little metaphor or analogy that made it make sense to me. And by the end of that call, he's like, dude, I never thought about what I do as being that creative. And I'm like, I was just making it make sense for myself through my own filter. But I was kind of walking that line of, I understand engineering, even though this is software engineering, you still have to get pretty much everything right or it's broken and it won't work, and then you got to go find out which small part was out of alignment and then it'll work. So I know enough where I can like hang with you, but at the same time I had to use my own filter for it to make sense to me. um, yeah, man, you're bringing up all kinds of cool stuff that I've never thought of. This is fun.
I mean, you know what? Here's the thing, right? I mean, you know, I've worked at companies, you know, before Facebook, LinkedIn, and things like that as a senior product designer. And then I also been previously a developer, so an engineer, software engineer, you know, for a little while. And like, I can just sit there and tell you again, there's also another pattern, like I'm saying on theirs in general, is like, if you look at your Zuckerbergs, you know, he plays acoustic guitar. You know, it's not widely talked about, and it's not like he goes on, you know, on TV and starts saying, "Hey, look, CNN guys, I can play a little bit of acoustic." But that channel is open.
Hmm.
You know, that channel is open, so he has that channel and he knows how to utilize it. He may not be the best guitarist in the world, but he knows how to channel that energy, and that helps you create. And he can. I think being an engineer and being a guitarist or any type of creative, you can get into this like spiritual state where you're just like, you know, you might want to stay up really late at night, typically like a musician, and just start creating
Yeah.
and be alone. It's this meditative state. And engineers will do the same shit. You know, you know how sometimes you just want your best song is in a room alone. Maybe it's in the dark, Maybe it's just no noise. Maybe it's quiet outside, or maybe there's this emotional thing. And if you think about it this way, and I'm not sure if you ever watched the Social Network movie, but
I haven't.
well, particularly in this situation, just to give you some context, supposedly Zuckerberg came home late one night because a girl had broken up with him or something, some type of situation. He wasn't getting girls or something, whatever it may be, and he came home and he started drinking after this party, and then he started, hacking up this website and called it Face Smash, and it was supposedly these faces of kind of like a hot or not. It was like one of the original hot or nots, in his college, and he grabbed the actual images out of the actual school directory and then sent it to a couple of friends, and then woke up the next couple hours and realized all the servers had crashed, and he was in trouble, but it was a hit. And the passion came because of some pain. And he got in this meditative state. He started drinking, went home, and just sat next to the computer in the dark and just started creating.
Yeah.
Just like you would do a hit song, those hit songs that are created from a broken heart or love, what's love got to do? Any of these things, that were kind of created usually have some type of pain behind it. And this sitting by yourself in a dark room type of scenario where you just like are in this meditative state, I think the pain can cause you to focus more and bring out that creativity.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about something else that you just mentioned too earlier, which was you mentioned something that I think is imperative, and that is, your soft skills, and one of those being, your self-awareness, we got proactivity and drive, but your self-awareness, that's a soft skill, and a lot of people take that for granted. And I heard you mention something that was pretty fucking magical. And it was really about, it's important to be self-aware because you feel like it's kind of not listed as something that's a priority or the highest top of the shelf. But in reality, your self-awareness can be one of the most imperative things to your being, because if you don't know where you are and where you play, then how can you actually play the game?
Yeah.
You got to know where you are.
How can anyone else know where you're at if they want to help?
Right.
Yeah.
But you're the commander of your own ship. So you've got to know how to move your own vessel. And if you're not aware of how the fucking gun works, you're not aware of how, the eye works, whatever it may be, whatever physical feature or mentality or your self-awareness of your being in general and your talents or whatever it may be, or where you lack things, it's hard to really identify how to fix them.
Yeah.
Or to promote them or turn them on and off. Because I feel like it's like you're like this machine, right? But you need to learn how to use all of the actual mechanics, right? You have it, but you don't really know how to utilize it in its full capacity. And that's what I'm saying, like, as far as those soft skills of self-awareness. But I also say something else though that I'm really tricky on this one. And what when people tell me like, hey, man, that's not me. That's just not me. That's just not my style. That's just not my style. I can't do that. That's not my style. I mean, I was on stage one time, and we were playing like in one show was like 10,000 people a pop, and I remember I invited this girl, really beautiful, awesome. Doesn't matter if she was beautiful, but it does. And I invited her backstage, and she was just like, after I was like, yeah, so how'd you like it? You can do whatever you want. And she just said to me, no, I can't. Like, you can do that, but I can't do that. I was like, no, you're not getting it. You can do whatever you want. She's like, no. I was like, whoa. And I was like, there was this pessimistic energy that I felt like, I didn't like that feeling, because I was just like, all the beauty just disappeared for me at that point. Cause it was just like, you don't know yourself. Who are you? Like, and what I mean by that, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm very cautious to declaring this is who I am.
Yeah.
Because as a spiritual being and as a being that is allowed to manifest itself into reality, which is a creative in general, we are all this. If I put myself in a box and say, this is who I am, I just called the universe and just said, hey, I can't do anything else but this. And the fact of the matter is, if you're not growing, if you're not taking risk, then guess what you're doing? You're not living one. and then you're not actually, you're not fulfilling your full capacity, because you have to take those risks and grow inner wise and learn, so you can figure out that, guess what, you're not, I am this person. You're somebody that's continuously in a growth process, a learning process, not somebody who is this exact destination. So I'm really tricky also, that when I declare my self-awareness, that I don't self myself into a box, because
Yeah.
myself freaking last year, like, yourself freaking last year was not the same dude. 5, 10
Yep.
years ago, it's not the same dude. You didn't know half of the crap that you know right now. And you probably look back and like, dude, look at all the shit that I know how to do.
Yep.
That's fucking amazing. Is that you, dude? Nah, that's not me. Is that you? Whoa, I can't believe I can do that. That's crazy. Me? No, not me. I mean, I don't care how much ego we all have. If you're not doing things that aren't scaring you, if you're not doing things that aren't challenging you, it's really like, if you're not amazed at some of the shit that you've actually able to do right now, then that means you're not taking enough growth and enough challenges, because you should be
Yep.
amazed of your growth. Putting on this podcast, doing all that stuff. I mean, I've studied photography, I've studied engineering, I've studied videography, but guess what? It changed when I actually had to put something together inside of a studio and build it all from scratch and do it remotely, right? It
Yeah.
changed, because you know what? Now I have to figure out proper lighting. Photography teaches you somewhat of that, but guess what? When you can rely on those nice automatic cameras, it's a little bit different with your lighting. You have to be really aware of color correction and things like that. Just your own unique setup. How are you going to do these things? I don't know. The technicalities really matter in the detail, and it cannot be a one size fits all. And kind of like what you're saying, you're solving those problems for people. It's a unique solution for most people, right? I mean, there's some basic stuff that you can repeat. That's kind of copy and paste. You get the
Yeah.
basic fundamentals, but there's different intricate details for each client or each person that you might need to actually bring out and do. And so it's like, once you kind of learn that stuff, it's really hard for other people just to come in and just like ride your show, because some of these things are very unique, and it
Yeah.
gives you like this superpower. And that's one thing that I always try to point out to people, Dan, is like, hey, I don't believe that you're this one person who just, can't do this or can't do that. But I also look at, what is your superpower right now? I try to find and identify everybody's superpower, just like a comic. Everybody has their own superpower that's unique. And it's like, I think what was it? I think it was Einstein. He said, if you judge a fish's ability to climb a tree, it might think that it's stupid for the rest of its life. And I use that all the time when somebody tries to come back with some pushback of like, oh, well, this person's not good at this. Well, it's like, hey, if you're a manager, if you're a owner, you're a boss, you're this guy, you can't just point at the other person and say, this person's not good at this. Maybe they're not good at that exactly yet, but I'm guarantee you, if you can locate something that they're good at, you can put them to work.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I love any opportunity to try to unpack self-awareness, because it's such a broad topic and it's important to keep top of mind. I love that you pinned it down to be something that's ongoing, right? Because that is, I don't think we arrive anywhere. There may be levels to the things we do, but I don't think we ever, get to level 8-4 for all the old school Mario players. But like, one of the things I think about quite a bit along those lines is kind of entrepreneurship in general. I had to like make good with the fact that you never arrive. You can have goals, you can meet those goals, but you can always grow the whole time that you're on the planet. So I shifted my thinking to journey instead of destination, like you were saying earlier. And it's super important to do that. It's something that keeps you humble. One of the things I joke about, it's fully true, but half joking, is especially in interviews and stuff, I like to say, I love pain, and then just be quiet for a second. So they're like, that's weird. Why do you tell us that? But then follow it up with saying, what I mean by that is I love being wrong and I love saying sorry. And it's not because those things always feel incredible. It's because I know I'm going to be better after it happens, after I make it right, after I grow, after I learn or admit I'm wrong. And that continues that journey, because the worst thing in the world is to be creative on your way somewhere and become stagnant. It's a horrible feeling. So I'm always trying to keep it moving. And I think self-awareness does it. You just kind of reset every day. And Where am I going? How am I getting there? If I don't know today, what am I focused on today? And something recently, I've always been willing to give advice in storytelling and video, but nowhere else. Because if I don't know it inside and out, I don't want to give advice. I'll just give you things to think about. But something recently that I've chewed on enough to feel I can give advice on is that really magical things happen when you start telling everyone you come in contact with where you're headed. And that's what keeps you from becoming that stagnant or being in a box. You start letting other people know, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. I haven't built it yet, but I'm gonna, and that's where we're headed. And humans in general are helpful in nature, but entrepreneurs, especially for some reason, are kind of extra helpful. And if you continuously let people know what you're up to and where you're going, 6 weeks later, someone might say, hey, you still trying to build that thing? Because I got someone who wants to buy it from you, or whatever ends up happening. And that's part of that, like, keep it moving type thing. So yeah, self-awareness is important. And like you said, you got to be careful and just keep checking in. I mean, check in with yourself, check in with other people, be open to criticism, get it lovingly where you can, but always be open to it. And I appreciate you diving into something that's a little bit deeper than your average conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's deep, but I think you also mentioned something that's also key too. Is like how you can, how you're looking at these situations deeply, and you're really trying to, you're really trying to diagnose like what is the actual issue, like what is the real problem. You're always digging deeper. You're really trying to balance things and solve these problems that are unique, and really trying to get to know yourself. But Dan, I have something that I'd also like to ask, and also see if you can trade this experience. But have you noticed? I've noticed this, but have you noticed? No matter how self-aware you may be, have you noticed that sometimes talking to a random stranger, a random old person, a random kid,
Yeah.
and they fucking like you knew something, you knew this, but you're just looking for that right
Yeah.
way to interpret it into this plane. You're just like,
Yeah.
I know there's this thing. There's this thing. It's almost like a song that's or something else that's like you kind of forgot, but you're just like, I'm trying to actually just get this word out. I know it, but there's this sweet little word or this thing about me that I know I need to say or do or express, and it would just like
Yeah.
open this next door into the
Yeah.
my mind. It just opens it, and you know it's there, but you can't
Yeah.
put your mouth on it. But then a kid just says it. A kid just says something simple, like you're just you know something basic like you can play that guitar so good you should be on the stage, or people can listen to you all day. I like this, or kids could listen to you, or just something weird. I'm giving a bad example, but something that will
Yeah.
open your mind to where you're just like that aha moment. And you're like, dude,
Yeah, man.
what'd you just say?
This just happened to me, and I'm not lying. This just happened to me. I was in a networking event for a startup called PickMyBrain.world, and it's a platform where people of all different kinds of technical proficiencies can have a little profile, and someone can come and pick your brain. And if they want services beyond just quickly picking your brain, they can pay, and it's really cool. It's almost like turning knowledge into currency.
Mm-hmm.
And someone on the call asked if we could have just a private call on another day just to kind of jam. And I was like, yeah. And she was older. So I love that you said an older person or a kid. And we got on that call, and it was, I mean, damn near life changing. It was an hour of just someone somehow seeing inside of me that I just met. And I was talking about having this linear pattern. And I'm not going to dwell here too long because it's more of a visual type thing that I'm trying to say. But I start with pulling story out of someone, and it ends up being, say, a video on a social media platform getting views and impacting people. And I'm trying to back up this linear timeline and maybe have an editor do the technical so I can get closer to the thing I love the most, and just keep on refining it until I get to the thing I love the most. And she's like, well, what do you love the most? And I said, well, the story development part. She's like, no, like, I'm not taking away from you saying that, story is important, but that's not what you do. And I felt challenged, but I felt good. I'm like, okay, well, go on. And she's like, no, it's more like you make the invisible visible. You look inside someone and you pull something out that they haven't shared with the world, and you help them then share it. And no one could see it until they met you and you helped them do that. And I was like, like, what? And it was exactly like you're saying. It opened doors. I've been saying it ever since. It changed my thinking about my own work. Like, and that was just this week. So it's so cool that you brought that up because it just happened to me.
Right. And it's like, I tend to do that weird shit all the time. Sorry.
I like it.
But it's so true though. It's like, there's there's these simple things that somebody can say and it just totally triggers things. And what I learned is I would actually start seeking these type of situations, these conversations with
Yeah.
people, because this, and what you're doing now is you're going around and you're spreading that knowledge, right? You're spreading that knowledge, but the difference of what you're doing is you know how to actually spread it and inspire others with that, that insight that she gave you, and you're passing it around to others, right?
Yeah.
So now you've become more of a bigger vessel than the person who just told you that, because maybe you needed to hear that so you can spread that message to others a lot further.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Does that make sense?
I got another short story if you're up for it.
I'm up
That
for
are
it. Let's
along
do
the
it.
lines that we're talking. So last year, July, August, lost everything, had to shut down my business, personal bankruptcy, a whole big story. Started over, very purposely went out into the Michigan wilderness to kind of just find myself. I took a whiteboard, a couple documentaries, and a book, and no agenda. And so literally starting over in a lot of different aspects in life, I was searching a little harder than normal. And I sent an email out to a small portion of my email list, and these were all colleagues, friends and family, clients that I had worked with so closely that they're now, friends and stuff like that. And I had about 30 to 33 people on an email list, and I sent out an email and said, "Hey, I've lost everything, but this isn't a boohoo email. It's just a will you please keep me top of mind email while I rebuild. And I'm not going to ask for anything for free. So please keep in mind all of my skill sets because you all know them. And if you guys need any help with anything, let me know because I want to keep that balance." And I got a great response, and people were really like, "I could never do what you just did. I could never tell the world I've lost everything." Like, that was incredible and inspiring. And I had other people who were like, "This is how I want to help." And it was such a rich like engagement and return that a few weeks later, I wrote the same list. And I'm like, "Hey, since everyone was really on board and was really engaging, I got a question for you. If someone asked you directly, if some reporter came up to you and said, 'Oh, Dan Bennett, like what do you think his superpower is?' What would you say?" And I expected to see some stories, some videos, some different things I've done in my life. I tell you what, 12 people wrote me back, all the same thing, and these people do not know each other. And it was some variation of, when I watch your videos, when I talk to you on a Zoom call, when we have a call, when I read your emails, when I engage with your content, whatever the case may be, I feel soothed. I feel like it's a calm environment. I feel creative and like I'm comfortable now because I've interacted with you. I have never heard this in my life. I've never had anyone in my real life before this say, "You just make me calm, Dan." And it was so cool to see this outside perspective because I asked for it come back in a way that I had no idea about. And that's exactly along the lines of what you said, is once you have some of those experiences in life, you do start kind of looking for them because they're kind of rad. And it's a dopamine hit, it's a spiritual awakening, it's energy, it's a lot of good things. So I look for them.
Yeah, they're like little trinkets, almost like playing the Nintendo game, right? Like
Yeah,
these
yeah.
secret things that you find, and you're like, once you notice that they're there, you're like, holy shoot, man, you can
Yeah.
find these secret things out, and it gives you extra powers, right? And then that power, you might be that vessel who can spread that to a lot of the masses a lot better. Maybe that one person just noticed that about you, but realized, hey, look, this is what I'm going to say to you. But maybe themselves, they couldn't say that to themselves. And also, you being the person who is the owner of that, maybe you can sell it better because it's a part of you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And
I
that
like
opened
that.
the box for other people, right? I mean, I just think it's amazing just to do that. Like, I've known, like, I just would start looking for little trinkets all around. I would just start, if I see an older man or I see a homeless person or somebody else like that, I'll just start talking to them. Or I see a person who, people say to me, like, hey, man, how do you have all types of friends? Like, how do you have people that are, evil, or this person's like, or this person's sad, or this person has a problem, or this person's sad, or this person says racist stuff, or this person does this, or this person's always happy. And this person's rich. How do you have all these dynamic people? Like, how do you have, and this person doesn't speak this language, or they speak all this other language. Like, how do you know these things? And it's like, well, you have to just open yourself to humanity, and you have to just, you have to humble yourself, and you have to
Yeah.
be, that type of person who wants to grow. You have to seek and you shall find. And I believe if you put yourself on that spiritual journey, that's a selfless journey. It's about giving back. I think you just find something, that gives back to yourself, and you just feel more energetic. You feel more fulfilled when you're giving something, You're really honestly giving something, and you didn't want anything exactly back. Just the fact that you helped somebody,
Yeah.
and that's just naturally that's your shit. That's your thing, and it's just fucking
Yeah.
awesome. But you also
Yeah.
learned something for yourself.
100%. I mean, again, I like joke, but only half joking that, I'm one of the most selfish people that you'll ever meet. But what a lot of people don't realize about that is that I love reciprocity and symbiosis so much. And it's such a close second to my own selfishness that people don't know that I'm taking because they're getting what they need as well, which then becomes, symbiosis. It becomes this relationship where no one's a parasite. And I love talking about that because it puts selfishness in a positive light instead of a negative, because it's most of the time, definitely painted negative. But, the old adage, if you, the oxygen goes down in an airplane cabinet, you put your mask on first so you can help other people. It's so stinking true. That's why I never get mad at that like cliche, because if you're taking care of yourself, if you know what makes you tick and run, then all the more you can help other people. And helping other people is definitely a top 5 in my things that fuel me. So all these things just kind of feed into themselves. And the little visual I always think of is like a fuel pellet, like all these different things packed into like a hockey puck, and you put that in your tank and burn it for hours and hours. And I'm really conscious about all the different ingredients that go into my little fuel pellet. Some is having great conversation that's deeper than how's the weather. Some is helping someone get on camera for this first time. Some is being with mentors that are teaching me stuff I don't know. And they all get compacted into that little fuel pellet. And if that pellet's not complete, I'm always out searching for the ingredient that's missing.
Amen to that, brother. I mean, I feel exactly what you're saying. It's like, and I think like sometimes like I've never had that type of mentorship. I think my mentorship has just been the universe and just these natural situations, just my unique ability to be able to just pick up these things, to receive these things, to understand which channels to turn to. And sometimes I don't know which channels to turn to, so I'm searching for them, like a lost vessel who's just continuously trying to grab these little trinkets and power up, like on one of the games. My hearts are going down. I need to keep those hearts up to 5. So maybe I have to go hit a freaking mushroom to get more energy. Maybe that's the thing. But literally, I mean, just like I don't know, man. I just feel like I feel like younger kids sometimes are more spiritually connected. They feel like they feel more like recently crossed over to where they're just more spiritually connected. And it just will say something so simple, and it's just like you're laughing about it, but it's just like, man, that's funny. But they're transparent. They're not going to sugarcoat anything. They're going to be transparent and say whatever they have to say, and whatever they see the universe reflecting or whatever they spiritually are connected to. And then older people, they'll say some amazing stuff. I remember I'd work in the mall as a teenager, and I would just stop older men. I would see them like, a wife, and, they're walking through the mall, and I would just stop them and say, hey, and because they would actually, a lot of times they would come to me. They would be drawn to me, and they would say, hey, how are you doing? I said, hey, man. I'm like, I'm doing great. They're like, yeah, man, they would say, I wish I was your age. And I would say, why? Why? They say, well, man, if I could go back, I would do this. I would do that. I wouldn't have got married, or I would have did this, or I would have married this person. Or, I just heard so many amazing life-changing stories. And so also not at the same time, it was a give and take, because they also wanted to express themselves. And then I would give them my feedback and opinion on that. And they'd be like, they would come to me and say something that would be creepy. We'd be like, hey, man, you're an old soul. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
But it was always just interesting, because it would be some type of, consistent feedback from them. And it would always be funny. It would be like, okay, well, yeah, maybe. But that's amazing. But I learned a lot of stuff about relationships and just life. And I wanted to see, they got to the end of they're close to the end of their ride, their experience, their journey. And I wanted to see what were their takeaways, what would they do different? What was life for them? One guy, he had told me that, he said, I don't know, I just felt an energy about him, an older guy. And I just said, hey, man, how you doing? He's like, yeah, I saw you over here, man. He's like, but yeah, I've just had a bad day. And he's like, but you know what? I'm happy. I'm alive, and I'm happy. I have kids, my kids are all, graduated in college. They have some families of their own. I'm happy that I'm where I am. And he said, but, I was like, yeah, that's awesome. I said, so you married and things like that? He's like, no, you know what? I'm actually divorced. I had a best friend for 30 years and we were best friends. And him and my wife, and his wife, we'd all go on family trips for years. And he said just one time he just discovered that his best friend was hooking up with his wife the entire time. And it was mind blowing. And then he said, I just went through this crazy divorce after it. And then she turned all my kids against me. And he's like, now things have changed and, I've grown from it and I've reflected on it. And now I've learned some things about that. And it's totally humbling. And it's just like, I heard so many unique stories, just wild stories, but some people just wanted to express themselves. And I thought it was humbling.
People don't get to do that very much, right? I've always been that kind of guy that'll like throw people off, bald head, beard, rock and roll. A lot of times people think that just means angry and ornery and all those things. And then they'll be kind of surprised by open-mindedness and empathy and things of that nature, which is a great icebreaker for me because it just interrupts people's patterns and they tend to open up. But a lot of people don't get the opportunity to because no one asks, And I think it's important to do those things. I love having conversations with people that are different than me. I mean, it's one of my favorite things in the world, and I get to do it, multiple times per week. Going to the older and younger thing again, I've always had this visual in my head of walking down a path, and when you're a young boy, you don't have a lantern, but you're brave, so you're just running, bumping into trees and branches and finding your way. And then maybe someone like me who's more, middle age, 30s to 40s and stuff like that, you got a lantern. You've learned to slow down a little. You're taking your time. You're doing well. And then I often envision when you're older, now you have two lanterns and one's in front of you and one you're holding back behind you so someone else can see the way. And I kind of hope to live my life that way, get to that stage where I'm holding the lantern for someone else behind me so they don't bump into so many things themselves. And I always feel like on that spectrum, the old wisdom, you just wish it could go back the other direction. Like you said, if I knew when I was your age. And then the young, just bravery and not, giving a shit what anyone thinks. You wish it could go the other way, and that people in their 20s and 30s and 40s had more of that. And I think you discover those things by having those conversations with people who are just not just like you, and it's a powerful thing.
No, I totally agree with you 100%. But I think also to top that off is just I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like, having this, because you mentioned about the lantern and as you grow this experience and having the lantern behind you. But I feel like, my entire life I've always had this lantern behind me. No matter what. I've always been giving back to the previous generation or even the same generation. Or even ahead of a generation, talking to an older person and really just, even with my mom, she'll ask me questions about life and relationship and I will just give it to her. Now her lamp, you would consider it ahead of mine, but it turns out I haven't seen that so much from my personal experience. I've tend to have this lamp where I've been giving it to any age or any person, no matter what their grace of age has been, and that's awakened them, or where they've actually been able to understand life, and where they may have not been able to settle, and sometimes it's just asking those real deep down questions and just being transparent about life, religion, the world, understanding the social hierarchies and just the game of it all, and that everything's just not really that real and it's not that serious. And
right.
I told my mom, Dan, literally when I was 15, I broke my ankle pretty bad. It was a bad break, right? Doctor told me, hey man, you gotta start walking, or your leg's gonna be, one could possibly longer than the other in your hands and stuff like that, and you'll have this boot on. You don't want that. So hopefully it stunts your growth. But if you want to do anything, the best thing for you to do is you have to walk on that leg. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to walk on my leg. Screw you. I'm done. My leg is broken. Because I had this big ego of I could never break a bone. And I would always drink milk, because those commercials told you so. Now we don't. But at that time, it was just I was just really I've been defeated. What happened? How did my leg break? Why? What am I doing? I can't walk right now. My leg's in pain. I'm in a cast. And then this weird humbling structure came into my mind, which was hey, I've got to get up and I've just got to do this. And so I started getting up and I started walking. Well, trying to walk. And I realized I fell down. And then I realized, like, hey, what the fuck is going on? I can't walk. How does that make sense? I can't walk.
Yeah.
I don't know how to walk. How do I forget how to walk? I'm standing up and I'm falling down. Like, what the fuck is going on with this, bro? Like, why am I'm my mind's tripping on itself. I'm like, why can't I walk? And I'm getting up and falling down. And then I realize, like, holy shoot, I cannot walk. I have to learn how to walk all over again. What the fuck is that? Isn't that crazy?
Heavy.
So
Yeah.
then eventually I started, I literally just, I kept going even throughout the pain. And I went with one of my buddies, Derek, to a mall. And I tried to take my mind off of it and say, hey, let's just walk through the mall and we'll look at girls and stuff like that at a younger age. And we just walked around the mall consistently all day, literally. And then at the end of the day, my leg felt a lot better and I could actually walk on it with the little casket boot. And I was actually walking again. And like, I didn't have to use this freaking crutch. And what it actually did is once I was able to start walking again, and then once the cast was off, each humbling moment gave me this lesson. Another one of those aha moments where it was like, hey man, life is amazing. Because you know what? Life is amazing. You have to be grateful for every experience that you get, even if it's the pain. Even if it's the pain. Because the pain is massive. The pain is a lesson. Don't take the pain for granted. Having that pain makes us feel and realize that we're alive, and it makes us grateful for those grateful moments, right? That pain, I welcome that pain. So when you said, earlier, the pain, it's like, yeah, that pain causes you to grow. It's back to the thing that we talked about earlier, which was like, that growth. Who am I? I am somebody who's consistently growing. Don't put me in a bucket to say I am this. My self-awareness says this is what I'm doing right now. This is what I am right now, but this is where I'm going. I'm a consistent being that's always looking for growth. So when somebody asks me, who am I? I'm a person always seeking growth. I'm seeking growth, spiritual growth, and I'm using that, as a part of my mission. But my job also is to inspire and open minds to others and educate them on the same awakening. That is what it is. That is my plan. But like in general, just from a silly little thing of my ankle being broken, I took a perspective that I think most humans would have not taken. I took a perspective that, hey, I can walk. So when I fucking got up, I smiled. Holy shit, I can walk. I can fucking walk, dude. This is amazing. Before, I never had that. I would just walk and get up and go do my thing. It didn't matter. And then I started thinking like, man, I can smell flowers. See those flowers? I can see. I can hear, bro. I can hear. You know what I'm saying? I can play guitar, And I'm going to be honest with you. I was literally working at this weird, odd job before I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And like, I needed a job. I was like 18 and I was like, took this tire job and like, I was changing tires and like this tire, I was actually going to balance it. I didn't know about tires. I didn't know anything about cars that much, but I wanted to learn about cars because again, I like to challenge myself, put myself in an uncomfortable situation where I feel like I would not tend to be. It caused me to grow. So I said, I'm going to fucking learn how to, do tires and learn about cars. And so I worked at the shop and I was learning. And then this one moment I needed to balance this tire and I was training this other guy who came in there and he was a lot taller than me. And I thought stronger too as well. And I just told him, hey, you put this on the balancer, you tighten this, like this, make sure it's tight. Is it tight? And he's like, yeah, it's tight. So you sure? He's like, yeah. I said, then you just push this button, then you wait for it to, balance itself. And then if it's off, then you put these little weights on there based off of what it reads. And you just do that with this little hammer. And I told him how to do it. And he put everything down and this thing just started spinning like normal. But I don't think the guy fucking put it on that tight like he said he did. And like, it just fucking flew. It said,
No.
the fucking hood, dude, Dan, look, boom, ding, and like the fucking tire just flew off like a flying saucer. And it like, I just said, I don't know how, it was like a second of reaction, but this big ass tire started levitating. It flew, the damn metal thing flew off and the tire just started levitating and spinning in the air and it flew up, but it started flying up, but I grabbed it with my arm and I said, God, doesn't matter if you don't believe anybody. I said, God, this is what I say when like shit moments happen. And I said,
Right.
God, and I just grabbed it in my hand. It's just spinning in my fucking hand, and it's going to this fucking guy's neck.
Oh
It's
no.
like inches from his neck, and the dude's like this. Like he didn't move because it happened so fast, but he could just
Yeah.
he was just doing like this, and I'm holding it like this. It's spinning, you know, like it was spinning like a fucking Globetrotter basketball in my fucking hand. But like it's like, and then I just like I pushed it back, and it flew back onto the actual thing. And it's bling, 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 and it bow. It smashed my fucking finger like a ketchup
yeah.
fucking package. And I just grabbed my finger and I just started cursing. I was like yelling. I was like, no, you did not mess up my guitar finger. I could not lose my finger. I lost my finger. I'm yelling. I'm like, fuck yeah. Why did I do this? And, you know, I didn't even want to look at my hand. I literally went to this like little urgent care place they sent me at this job. And I didn't want to look at my hand. I was like, I don't want to look. I don't want to look. My hand is gone. Oh my God. I'm so angry right now. And it turns out it wasn't gone, but it was a little bit numb after that. And I had to learn how to play guitar again. And then I was like, fuck, you know what? This little pain that I feel every once in a while, this little dull ache, a numbness, it reminds me that, hey, I fucking have a hand. I have a hand. I can play guitar. I can touch things. It reminded me that senses of just touch is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Don't take that shit for granted. Don't take your 5 fingers for granted. Don't take life for granted. Don't take the things that you were blessed to have for granted. Don't take your skills that you've learned for granted. Don't. So the pain taught me that, right? The pain taught me that. And now I teach that same message to people. Is like, be humble, man. Just when you wake up, I'm fucking awake. Be happy you just woke up. Be happy you walked outside. You can see sunlight. Because guess what? At some point, we fucking won't.
Yep.
Enjoy life while you can. Don't worry that you don't have this, you don't have that. Strive to do whatever you feel like you want to do, but stop. Smell the fucking roses and enjoy the life and the simple things of watching a fucking ant walk across the street or crawl, whatever you want to say. Just those simple things, just the simple things that have those nice headphones on your head to be able to fucking shave your face, to be able to grow a fucking beard. You know, I guarantee you miss having your beautiful long hair. But if you fucking had your hair back again, you would not. Now you've learned through the pain that, hey, I don't have my fucking long hair anymore. So there's just like appreciation for fucking hair.
Yeah, man.
Right?
Oh yeah. I love that you use "Stop and Smell the Roses" as the cliche reference because I, in a lot of my conversations talking about, I feel like half of my career is making cliches matter again. And I always use that in particular one. And I imagine some poet sitting on a park bench somewhere and someone's walking the trail through the park on a sunny day and they stop and back up a couple steps and they palm a rose and they smell it and they smile and they walk off. And the poet observed this and wrote, "Stop and smell the roses." The first time, and I'm not saying that's how it happened, but the first time that happened or it was written or the sentiment started to be received in a poetic nature, it was gigantic for people's minds. It was impactful. It was incredible. Now, we say it a million times, it loses some of its potency. And I always just like to remind people, say it more than once. Stop and smell the roses. Like, no, what does that actually mean? Well, it means slow down, enjoy stuff, exactly what you're saying. And I think sometimes that's all it takes is just pause, deep breath, chill every once in a while. You don't got to meditate for 4 hours straight, but you can slow down and smell some flowers for sure.
But isn't that just about, that also goes back into what we've been talking about at the beginning of the actual show, which is self-awareness.
Yeah.
And self-awareness is also embodies understanding that you are here temporarily and it is a blessing every fucking day just to be able to breathe. Simple things, that you have lungs, that you don't have a fucking heart problem. You don't have these, just the basic things in life, or even that you can just breathe and still walk around. Anything that you have that you take for granted, you got to wake up and be like, hey man, I don't care what's, I'm mad about this or this happened. It's not really worth it. It's awesome. It's okay to be mad. It's okay. But you got to go back and reflect and say, wait a minute, I'm mad, but that's happy. Madness, pain helps me, and reflect and say, but you know what? I can do this, and I have this, and I have that. What am I talking about? Why am I complaining?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I like it.
Because
I
sometimes
do.
it
Yeah.
takes us over. I mean, you said like, August, you had you had a bad moment. You had a bad
Yeah.
moment. You had bankruptcy and some things like that. But now look at you now. Now you're back on your feet. A cat can just, a cat's good at getting back on its legs. After it's
Yeah.
after it's fucking fallen a couple of times and lost a couple of lives, it's good. It starts landing back down pretty easy. It's like, all right, I got this. I know how to do this. The pain, all right, I feel you, dude. Yeah, I lost it
Yeah.
all, but you know what? You were confident enough to know that you were going to get back, and you got back.
Yeah.
And you're continuously
I did.
growing, and now you've created a business. You're podcasting and things like that. Were you podcasting before, or like how far are you in the journey?
Just kind of during, yeah. Technically, like the first episode came out a little shy of 2 years ago, but it wasn't consistent until about that time. What's funny about that, man, is being, allowing yourself to be upset. I had, man, I was counting at the time. It got up over 10 different people who during that time said, you know what, man, that sucks. But like, if there's one thing I know about you, Dan, you're super resilient. And after about the 6th or 7th time I heard that, I was like, shut up. I don't want to hear how resilient I am anymore. And like my go-to for people I was close to and I knew I could like, bust their shins a little bit, I would say, when does resiliency become stupidity and maybe you should stay down so you don't get punched again? And people will be like, geez, that's dark, and then as I kind of came out of it, especially September, October, I fell back in love with being resilient. And I was like, God, they were all right, but it was painful and it made me, I wouldn't say angry, but it definitely upset me hearing it so much where I'm like, yeah, easy for you to say I'm resilient, but I'm the one going through this. But yeah, everything ebbs and flows and it's okay. It's okay when it's ebbing. It's okay when it's flowing. You just gotta, kind of learn to time those rhythms in your own life and yeah, keep trucking, man. Like cliche but true. Just keep moving.
I think that's cool, and I like how you also mentioned, because you mentioned a couple of you mentioned a couple of nuggets, obviously, but I like how you mentioned how you were like, you got tired of being resilient. You're like, dude, and I've been there before too. It's just like, hey, and people are like, oh man, you're so successful. You're so successful. I'm like, yeah, man, but the fucking journey.
Yeah, if you saw the movie,
Yeah.
it's not all fun to watch.
And
Yeah.
it's just like, what is your level of success? Like what do you see as success?
Yeah.
I mean, somebody might say it's just pure happiness, but I don't believe there's such a thing. Success is something that you may feel, and it may make you feel comfortable in some sense, but being comfortable doesn't really make you successful because being comfortable is almost dying, right? Because you have to have that pain. So it's just like, why have you ever, I mean, I don't know how you reflected this, but maybe you thought like, hey, why is this shit happening to me? Why do I always got to be resilient?
No, I've been there. Yeah.
But like maybe a lot of people have been through a lot of shit too, but they're just not talking about it. Maybe they're just not talking about it. They have other fucked up shit that's going on in their brain, but they're just not talking about it. And you're just more transparent about it. And they might just be hiding it, especially with things like social media where you can just hide the bad shit, Like I don't even put any of my personal life on social media. I just only talk about my business and, the things that I like, my passions and drives. I don't put like personal family, who this person is connected to me, anybody I'm in a relationship with or dating or seeing or talking, whatever. I don't put that stuff out there because it's just like, I don't know, almost feels like bad luck in some way where people just like always talking about it. And then when something doesn't go right, then everybody's like, hey man, sorry about that. And it's like, dude, no, it's all good, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
You know what I mean, right?
Like, no, I'm good. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. I think we're in an interesting point in this world, and yeah, man. What got you into podcasting?
So I think it was late 2017. I was making some video content and I was just kind of ranting. I do that sometimes. I do it on a topic, but I just share my opinions on some random thing. And I was just kind of getting fed up with all the gurus and the I say this lightly because I have coursework and membership that helps people do things, so I'm not shitting on coursework by any means, but just all these courses of, how to become a coach who coaches coaches on how to coach coaches. And it's just like, geez, here's my 20-step plan. You can have a Lamborghini too. And just all that stuff.
Ty?
Right. So I was like getting fed up with that kind of thing and just ranting about it in a fun little video. And I said, take entrepreneurship. Okay. Entrepreneur, the word, it used to be back in my day, if you said that, someone would go, oh, you're an entrepreneur? You don't have a job, do you? And now people are throwing it around and just labeling themselves. And I'm not saying that, if you're an influencer, you're not an entrepreneur or anything like that, but some people are just using it when they have no business, they have no structure, they make no money. And it's like, are you really an entrepreneur? I don't know. So because I was fed up with just these shiny things and silver bullets and magic pills and stuff, I said, you know what? I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm the antipreneur. And it kind of just stuck. People liked it. They resonated with it. I started calling myself that. And it's not anti-entrepreneurship. It's just anti all the BS that we don't need. And it was the following year, 2018 late, where someone was like, you're talking at conferences all over the country and you're on video all the time and all this stuff. You should do a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, but I got so many things, going on. I don't want it to be like another business thing. And then I was like, you know what? I am going to do it, but it's just going to be my sandbox. I'm just going to do it for fun. I'm not going to try and monetize it, even though I have made money off from it. But I'm going to do me. I'm not even going to follow a format. Some are just me and they're like 10, 20 minutes long. Some I have guests and they're like 45 or an hour. And I just started doing it. And when it came time to name it, I'm like, well, it's the Antipreneur Show because I don't have any other great ideas at the time. And then that whole like crushing the status quo type vibe was how I would vet all my guests. It's like, I don't care what you do in the business world or in the professional world or anything. You just have to be doing it your own way. You got to be pushing back against the system a little bit. And most people are, especially in the entrepreneurial space, doing their own thing their own way. So it just started becoming fun and I haven't stopped doing it. I think I'm coming up on 50 episodes here pretty soon. And it's just a fun way to get to know people and, talk a little bit more.
Are you? I know. And I don't know. I find it almost as a way, like, I don't know how you've, really just, what was your idea or your thought about my podcast? I don't know how much due diligence you did about it ahead, but what was your perspective of it? What was your thought about it? Like, what did you think about my podcast? What's your transparency on that? What do you think?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't do a ton of due diligence. I recently, at the suggestion of a colleague of mine, signed up to matchmaker.fm because I'm looking to get on more shows and get my face out there a little bit more. And then hopefully eventually use the platform to get some guests as well coming my way. And just started looking for things that interest me. And to be honest, your thumbnail grabbed me. And just a little bit of the description, sounded not, tick the boxes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It sounded like it might be, at least a little customized or a little bit free flowing. So that's about as far as I got, but that's what attracted me and why I clicked the button.
And what about the thumbnail, intrigued you?
Oh, that it's not the same as all the others. I've been designing since like 98. So I don't tell people I do it professionally because it's terrible work, but I still use that work in my work all the time. And I have podcasting clients where I take them from zero to distribution. And a lot of times that is creating their thumbnails. And I'm oftentimes not forced, but close to forced to do just your generic run of the mill, cut and dried thumbnail. So I think the artistry of it was the color and the artistry of it was just cool. And it just made it feel different than just here's my photo and a title and 2 colors that go together, So I think that's what I would say.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, I'll just give you a little background on my discovery process of it, and I'm also a senior product designer for, companies. Like I said before, like I've done some work at Facebook. I've done some also at LinkedIn and a bunch of other cool companies as well. But I feel branding is powerful. It's a part of the storytelling, but there's a vibration in names. There's a vibration in names. Like when you say somebody's names, there's a thought or a vibration or a spirit or energy that carries along with it. So when you say these things, you're manifesting something. There's something about the name. And so for me, to be honest with you and transparent, I like to be transparent. I didn't actually design the actual thumbnail, but it was designed in my mind, for example, because there's some things I feel that are redundant and, things I don't feel like spending my time with on product or designing or making. Because some things I feel like, you know what? Hey, look, there's this thing that I have in my mind and this is what we're going to do. So literally what I said is I knew once I had the name automatically, that was the first thing I start off. I love to start off by the name. The name to me creates everything else. Sometimes even when I'm writing music, it's maybe a chord and that creates the whole entire song. Or maybe there's 2 words. Maybe it's just a chorus and I already know the whole song already. I already know the drums. I already know the keyboards. I don't know if there is no drums, there is no bass, or whatever it may be. I already know it. I already see it. All I need to do is just hear that, just that aha moment again. And so for me, I use the same type of thing when I'm designing or building things. And for something like this, I thought it was just like, hey, this is not really that. I don't want to spend my time doing this right now, but I will tell somebody else what I want, and I'll look for somebody who has a similar feel of where I feel like I'm going. And I just got this guy off of Fiverr, and I was like, hey, look, you have this energy and visuals that I'm looking for in my mind, and this is what I feel like creating. It's the Kids in the Room podcast, right? But what I feel like is, something about, who I am, which is, that represent my open-mindedness. Let's do pyramids. Let's do fucking spaceships, alien flying saucers. These are the kids that are all in the room. But in some sense, they are influencing us, right? And these conversations. And so what I thought of is like, the kids in the room to me means something that's, childlike and innocent and transparent, which is those moments when we were kids, even before phones were addictive things. We just sat in the room and, we played Nintendo, we played games, whatever it may be, or PlayStation, and we just talked shit. If we played music, we just hung out with our buddies and we just talked. We just talked.
Yeah.
And it was just transparent. And that conversation, we all just, I don't know, sometimes you know how it is. You were young,
Yeah.
you're playing with your friends, you're playing band, you're doing whatever, or even just playing games, and you just have these conversations with your buddies, or maybe there's girls in the room, and they're just really transparent, and they're just like, I don't know, these unforgettable conversations, and you just feel good
Yeah.
after having them. And I was like, I want to bring that type of situation where there's some type of like openness and education, and it's just like this great feeling experience after I've actually had this conversation like we did when we were kids. Just that transparency. And I said, that's what I want to do when I do a podcast. So I'm going to call it The Kids in the Room.
Yeah, dude, that's powerful. It really is. I love that you broke down your concept. Because the design process, no matter what kind of design it is a process. So it's cool to know the individual steps. And I just, I love that sentiment so much of the transparency of just being kids and just, like you said, just bullshitting with each other because it is so pure. And I just got done building something for a community where I want to bring people together to get comfortable on camera, because I started discovering how many of these people I've worked with were uncomfortable getting on camera, and I never knew it, even though we were consulting and stuff. It just didn't come up for one reason or another. And there's a lot more of that story, but the gist of it is I put a lot of research and time in the last 8 months into trying to create tools or find a way to help people, because I'm totally not the guy to say, oh, just get over it, get on camera, do it, it'll be crappy for 100 videos and then you'll be fine. No. So as I started looking into that more, having more conversations with people, asking people how they got on camera or what their superpowers were that we leveraged to get them there. And I started building this community. I very purposely called it a sandbox for that exact reason. I want people to know they can come, they can put up videos in a loving and safe environment, still get critique and review, exercise their muscles, get their reps in, but do it in a place that's safe, so then they can get to a level where they feel comfortable on camera, and then they can put it out to the world through their own channels. And I called it sandbox.video on purpose because I wanted people to have that sentiment of just playing, just having some fun and chilling with people you trust. And I love that was your inspiration, because we need to get back to that. I don't think it's that hard to do. It's liberating. I tell this story all the time. There's a place in Flint, Michigan called the Machine Shop, and it's like the most badass rock club in possibly the nation as far as small rock clubs go. And you get all kinds there, but there's always some biker dudes. And I'd walk into this place, and from the door to the bar, which is only like a 25-foot trip, I'd have 3 or 4 big badass biker dudes hug me, embrace me on the way in, and I'd order a Jack and start sipping. There's so many times where people would be like, I've never seen Dale even smile at someone, let alone hug them. Like, what the hell was that? And I would just say, it's just respect. Once you open up with someone and you share something intimate with someone, you respect them more. And we've had those conversations. We've had real life conversations, because I didn't look at the leather and the boots and say, I would never talk to that guy. We had great conversations somewhere in the past 5 years, and I love that, because not everyone is what you think. And that childlike nature is important, man, because the world kind of beats it out of us, unfortunately. So if we can get it back, I think it's a win.
Yeah, man, totally, man. And I think it's really, I think you're touching back on the same conversation I said earlier, which is like just reaching out to anyone out of your supposed comfort zone or what people do and think, because they learn something too. You know, they learn something about you, those preconceived, thoughts or experiences that they thought about you or whatever it may be, ideas totally just go out the window, and it opens their mind, and now they've changed in general. And one of my, actually when I first moved out, my mom's pad, one of my buddies was Chris, and like his dad owned a Harley shop. So his whole family were fucking bikers, to be honest with you. And, I remember like, living and hanging out with him and stuff like that. And something that happened to Chris was that his dad had this, like, they were moving something in their house, and they were living like in the woods and shit like this. And, pretty much what happened is they were moving something and it had a big chain on it, and they were kids, and he was outside, probably like 13 years old, and the chain popped, and a piece of the chain that popped hit Chris's jaw and tore it off, and like his whole bottom of his face and nose was all destroyed. So he spent years getting this repaired, and there was a guy, you might say that was a pretty handsome guy prior. Not to say that he was not afterwards, but not as handsome after it was destroyed, and he had to get all this titanium in his face, rebuild his actual face, his nose, his whole face just totally changed. He was totally visually a different person. Fake teeth and this magnet that he had to put on his mouth. And, he had this personality of smiling and being nice to everybody, even though his face was pretty much defigured throughout high school. And still is to this day. I mean, it's not noticeable anymore, but it's not as so-called handsome as he was as a child, or he would have been without this, damage. So I just saw him, I was like, man, that's pretty awesome that he can just smile at people, man. To some, not everyone will feel that way. Some people that will get to them, but I just thought that was amazing. But to take it back, I understand what you mean about, bikers and things like that. I mean, really nice people. But I kind of look at Vikings as the modern day Vikings.
I like that. I like that. I'm a huge fan of Norse culture, so I like that.
Do you got any Viking blood?
I don't think so. Man, I should though, for as much time as I spend. They're that culture is known for only writing if they absolutely had to, and the rest was all verbal storytelling, and I just love that. I love knowing that, so. The bald head and the beard is as close as I get, I think.
Right, but you have like this infatuation with things like the Vikings shows and things like that, always drawn to it and stuff like that. Yeah, it's interesting though, because like I actually ran into like the Viking show, and I was just like, I was glued. I was stuck, and I was like, oh, Ragnar, oh my God. And I started digging and I'd read previously before about Leif Erikson, coming to the Americas prior 500 some odd years roughly before Columbus. And I'm pretty sure there was more than that. As I say to other people as well, the Egyptians can build pyramids, but they couldn't build ships to go to the United States. That's a whole other thing. But my point in general was like, I was just intrigued about Vikings, and I just felt like I was, like I was experiencing, or like I was there. And like, I don't know, just felt like it felt natural to me. It felt normal, and it felt like, I don't know, I could relate. It felt like I could just live there and chill with everybody, and it would be normal. Yeah. Like nothing would feel odd to me being a Viking. It wouldn't bother me like, oh no, I'm not. Why am I here? These people feel unfamiliar. No, they fucking feel like my brothers. They feel like my friends. They feel like my tribe. They feel cool. And the irony of that is, I did a DNA test, and when I did a DNA test, and then my uncle did like also ancestry, like tracing and stuff like that. And he found out that one of my great grandparents was a Grimmett, and a Grimmett, and also matching with my DNA test said, I had a lot of Nordic ancestry as well. And so I was like, what the fuck? Nice. And then, turns out the Grimmett is the Nordic. And so Grimmett is actually a Viking surname, which stands for the Grim One, which is like the enforcer, which is like the big
Doesn't
guy.
Get much more badass than that.
Yeah. So somewhere, I may not be a tall guy, but for somewhere there was like this giant, Viking somewhere down the line, and they adopted the surname of Grimmett and just kept it on because, back in the day, you were called based off of what you looked like or what you kind of did. What you did was kind of who you were. If you were the one that was fierce, you're the grim one. So then they took the surname and they passed it on, which is interesting,
cool.
right? So then it's like,
Yeah.
it shows a correlation of like, hey, maybe why I'm actually interested in these things. And I found that in my past in general is like things that I've had these like this, I don't know, impassion or fire for or interest in dramatically. I've discovered that I had some genealogically or DNA reference within my bloodline. Even the whole pyramid shit. Like I found out that my paternal line goes all the way back to Ramsey III. So one of basically my father's father, one of those in line was Ramsey III, which is wild. So it's like this love of pyramid and this love of Viking, all these things kind of came back. And like I was talking in my previous episode, I just aired yesterday. I was like, I'm also, I also researched the idea of DNA memory, right? Because you know how you inherit things. They say like, oh, your father could do this, or your parent could do this, so that's why you are more talented at doing those things. But also, is there a memory towards that? Just like how you get certain features or phenotypes to that. If you come from more of a northern or a European ancestry, you typically might have a lot of hair on your body. Typically, because these are colder environments and things like that. But different phenotypes or features or things that come from your ancestors that may come to you, does the memory actually, kind of go along with that?
Yeah, that's super fascinating. I might just have to do one of those kits now just to see. Yeah, that's ridiculously fascinating. I saw a study not too long ago about nature versus nurture where twins were separated somewhere shortly after birth and adopted by different families, and that they found each other later in life and they had a lot of inherent qualities that were very similar, including mannerisms, even though they lived in completely different parts of the world. And that was powerful. Like, whoa, we carry that stuff with us no matter who our parents are and who's having an impact on us. So that's fascinating. I have to
Yeah,
look more into that. It's
I
cool.
think it's rad. You should definitely hit me up once you do so. It's awesome. I know they,
Yeah.
there's these things about percentages. You don't want to get stuck on those things, because percentages are just algorithms. But you can do an actual, DNA test or ancestry test and kind of trace back who your family names and surnames and go back, and you can kind of match that with the DNA. You can kind of guess it, but I really don't try to get hooked on the percentages. I really focus on, is this bloodline there? And is there a reference of it? Because sometimes it's, because it's just an algorithm at some point, but you want to know, like, is there a reference to it? And if you can match it up with actual names and you can find those ancestries and you start building this actual trail or telling this story. So as you mentioned about storylines, this is a storyline, and a part of storyline is how you can connect with others. And I'd like to focus on how you connect with others versus how you're different from others.
100%, brother.
Does that make sense?
100%.
But I think too many people focus on these small, minute things or variances. Oh, well, you're not exactly like me, so you're different. But it's just like, no, man, you're doing it all fucking wrong.
Yeah,
Focus on what we have more in common and start the conversation there. Lead it with that. And I think we can build a better, beautiful world somehow if more people start doing that. That's kind of my message. But yeah, man, it's been great having you on. Definitely would love to have you back on again. Great conversations, and definitely want to stay in touch and keep in touch about your whole podcasting journey, my podcasting journey. Us podcasters have to stick together and kind of click. But I also had one question before you go.
Yeah.
What is your birth sign?
I believe it's Cancer. July 22nd is my birthday, and I think it's like on that day where there's a few years back where they moved the dates on a couple months, and I think I ended up on the cusp, is what they call it, right? So I think I'm Cancer right next to August, which I don't know what that one was. Sorry.
Yeah. What's July the 22nd? Let's look it up. We're gonna look it up on my phone. We're gonna look it up, audience. We're gonna find out what is Dan's real horoscope. So we're gonna go July the 22nd.
Yeah.
Zodiac sign. Let's look that up. It is July the 22nd. You are exactly on the cusp.
Yeah, I was thinking that it was close.
Because let's do Leo. So we're going to go with Leo and see what that day. Let's see what that is. That's crazy. On the 22nd. You start right on the 22nd. And the reason why I ask you that The reason why I ask you that, because I was like, all right, this is energy about this guy. He's doing some similar things. I understand some of his perspective and where he's going in life, is because I'm a Leo. And so when I pick up those energies, I'm like, I can kind of tell who energies are a little bit stronger than others. And when it's like a fire sign or somewhere similar, you're right on the cusp. You're right on the cusp. Yeah. July the 22nd in August, you're right there. So that is what it is. That is what it is. Great minds think alike.
That's fun, man. Hey, I'll take it.
There you go.
I appreciate that you looked that up on the fly too, because that was fun.
Hell yeah, man. We got to do it, man. But stay in contact. What I'm gonna do is I normally try to push the actual pod and release the video a little bit separate, and I kind of go back and make clips of those. But I first actually just do the actual audio. I'm gonna go take a trip, visit some friends and family in Miami, and then NC and some other things like that. But I'll be on the road and still just putting shit together. But I'll let you know and keep you posted of every single thing. And send me also an email of like anything you want to highlight.
Yeah, for sure. I'll put that together. And I'm a huge proponent of marketing. It's a good part of what I do anyway. So any tools you have or anything you want me to put out on my end, let me know. And I always have fun with it because there's a decent sized portion of my audience who just likes to know what I'm up to. So they're looking for those releases in my newsletter stuff of like, what show have you been on? Who did you talk to? And all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it'll be fun.
And right now you've been like growing your podcast and stuff like that through just going on the shows. Cause I've read the like blogs. People are like, oh, you want to grow it even more? Just go on other people's shows and things like that. That's a way to grow your podcast. But I've noticed that some people will just automatically go on the bigger shows, and then they can actually they can kind of skip a lot of the little hustle and bustle. And if you're not doing the advertisement. But yeah, I mean, I think that's an extra way. There's a lot of little tricky ways, but we can talk about that again another time and off air. So
yeah, it's cool that I get to come back someday. So I passed the litmus test.
There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Kids in the Room podcast. Kids in the Room podcast.
That's right. That's right.
Brought to you by Move Faces TV. Let's go.